When I think back on that summer, I remember the smell first. Coffee beans roasting, sweet pastries fresh from the oven, and that faint trace of cinnamon that never seemed to leave the air. It was the summer I turned 24, the summer I worked at a small coffee shop downtown, and the summer when everything in my life started to feel a little more real. I hadn't planned to work in a cafe. It just happened. I'd finished my last semester of college and didn't have a job lined up. Everyone around me seemed to have a plan: graduate school, internships, jobs in big cities. I had nothing, just a diploma in communications, a few savings in the bank, and a restless heart that didn't know where to go next. One morning in May, I was walking downtown, trying not to think too hard about my future, when I saw a handwritten sign taped to the window of a coffee shop. Help wanted. Apply inside. The shop was called Harbor Street Cafe, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. It had a striped awning, a chalkboard menu on the sidewalk, and a line of people waiting outside. I went in. The air smelled like heaven: coffee, sugar, and something warm from the oven. The counter was small, the shelves lined with mugs and jars of beans. Behind the counter stood a man in his 40s with rolled-up sleeves and kind eyes. "Looking for a job?" he asked when he saw me staring at the sign on the counter. Maybe," I said. He smiled. "Name's Paul. I own this place." "Ever worked in a cafe?" "No." "Like coffee?" "Yes." "Good enough. Can you start tomorrow?" And just like that, I was hired. My first shift was chaotic. The cafe was busier than I'd expected: students with laptops, office workers grabbing drinks before meetings, mothers with strollers, tourists holding maps. The espresso machine hissed, cups clinked, and Paul moved behind the counter like a conductor leading an orchestra. He introduced me to the rest of the staff. There was Grace, a college student who could make a latte in 20 seconds flat. There was Henry, who had been working there for years and seemed to know every customer by name. And then there was Olivia. She was about my age, with curly hair pulled back in a messy bun and a smile that made people relax the moment they saw it. "Don't worry," she said when I spilled milk on the counter. "Everyone's terrible on their first day. You'll get better." I wasn't sure if I believed her, but her voice was calm, and somehow I felt like maybe she was right. The days fell into rhythm. I'd arrive early, tie on an apron, and help set up the cafe. We'd grind beans, wipe tables, stack pastries in the glass case. The doors opened at 7, and from then until noon, the shop buzzed like a hive. Orders flew in: large cappuccino, extra foam; iced latte, oat milk, no sugar; Americano, double shot, to go. And I fumbled my way through them. By the end of each shift, my clothes smelled of coffee and sugar. My hands were sticky from syrups and foam. My feet ached. But strangely, I didn't mind. There was something comforting about the routine. Outside of work, my life was quiet. I still lived in my childhood home on the edge of town. My mom worked as a teacher, my dad as an electrician. They were proud I'd graduated, but I could see the question in their eyes every time we sat down for dinner. What now? I didn't have an answer. But at the cafe, I didn't need one. I just needed to show up, make coffee, and try not to spill too much. And in that simplicity, I found peace. One slow afternoon, Olivia leaned against the counter while we waited for the next wave of customers. "So," she said, "what do you actually want to do?" I laughed nervously. That's the million-dollar question. Everyone keeps asking me. I'm not everyone. I don't know. Something creative, I guess. Writing, maybe. I used to write short stories in college. Used to. I shrugged. It feels silly now. Like a hobby, not a real job. She tilted her head. Sometimes hobbies turn into real jobs. You just have to keep doing them long enough. Her words stayed with me. That night, after dinner, I opened my old notebook. It had been months since I'd written anything. The pages smelled faintly of ink and dust. I sat at my desk and wrote a few lines about the cafe, about the way the light fell on the pastry case in the morning, about the sound of milk steaming. It wasn't much, but it was something. By June, I felt like part of the team. Paul trusted me to handle morning rushes. Grace taught me latte art, though my hearts and leaves always came out crooked. Henry showed me how to clean the espresso machine, telling stories about customers as he worked. And Olivia, well, she became my favorite part of the day. She had a way of turning ordinary moments into something brighter. If the line was long and customers grew impatient, she'd tell a joke. If a child spilled cocoa on the floor, she'd kneel down with a smile and clean it up without complaint. If I looked tired, she'd slide a cookie across the counter when Paul wasn't looking. One evening, after closing, she asked, "Do you want to walk home together?" We lived in the same direction, it turned out. We strolled through quiet streets, passing bookstores and closed shops. The air smelled of summer, cut grass, warm pavement, faint perfume from passing flowers. "Do you ever feel stuck?" I asked her. "All the time," she said. "But I also feel like stuck isn't forever. It's just where we are right now." Her honesty made me feel less alone. The summer deepened. The days grew hotter, the cafe busier. Tourists flooded downtown, maps in hand, eager for iced drinks. I learned to move faster, to balance trays, to smile even when customers were rude. I stopped spilling milk as often. I started to feel like maybe I belonged there. One Saturday, Paul announced that the cafe would host an open mic night. Music, poetry, stories, whatever people want to share, he said. It'll bring in business. And it'll be fun. Olivia turned to me. "You should read something." I shook my head. "No way." "Why not?" "Because I haven't written anything worth reading." "You're wrong," she said. "And even if you're right, it doesn't matter. It's not about being perfect. It's about sharing." I didn't answer. But that night, I wrote. I wrote about the cafe, about the smell of cinnamon in the air, about the strangers who came and went each day, about how a summer job could feel like a small piece of home. The open mic night came in late July. The cafe was packed, customers squeezed into chairs, leaning against walls, holding cups of coffee as they waited. A local guitarist played first, then a young woman read a poem. My hands shook as I held my notebook. When my turn came, I walked to the front. My voice felt small, but I read anyway. A story about mornings at Harbor Street Cafe, about light, about laughter, about how even small places can hold something big. When I finished, the room clapped. Olivia smiled from the counter, her hands folded like she'd known all along that I could do it. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud of myself. August came quickly. The days grew shorter, the evenings cooler. The cafe slowed as tourists returned home, and we found more time to talk between orders. One night, Olivia and I walked again. We stopped by the river, watching the water move under the bridge. "What happens after this summer?" I asked. She shrugged. "I go back to school. You'll find something too. And us." She didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, "Sometimes the best things aren't meant to last forever. They're just meant to change us." Her words stung, but I understood. The cafe held one last party before the end of summer. Staff gathered after closing, music played, and Paul brought out trays of leftover pastries. We laughed, danced, and told stories. When it was time to leave, Olivia hugged me. "Keep writing," she whispered. I promised I would. Now, when I walk downtown, I still pass Harbor Street Cafe. The awning is the same, the chalkboard menu still outside. I sometimes step in for a coffee, and Paul waves from behind the counter. I don't work there anymore, but every time I smell cinnamon in the air, I remember that summer. The laughter, the exhaustion, the taste of espresso on my tongue, the courage to read words out loud, the walks through warm streets. The girl with the curly hair who reminded me that stuck wasn't forever. That summer didn't solve everything. I still don't have all the answers. But it gave me something better, a beginning. And sometimes that's enough.